When StarCraft first came out in 2010, there were no esports hadn't yet gotten to where it is right now, obviously. You're not getting athletic visas for esports players. You don't have multi-million-dollar tournaments. There had been some. Brood War had been actually StarCraft 1 Brood War, huge in Korea, but in outside of Korea there hadn't really been any traction. But StarCraft 2 came out, and it was pretty much the most popular esport. It kicked off esports as it is now. I think a lot of people could make that argument. I think that's pretty true. As it started right around the time when live streaming became practical. You had people like Day9, like Destiny, a lot of the people on Ustream, actually, then Justin TV, and then even Twitch TV. It kind of jump-started because of StarCraft. Or at least it had a large part of it, because there were no other real games, there were no other real streamers, so StarCraft had the top of the podium, and it was sharing it with pretty much no one. And no one likes sharing, right? And StarCraft at that time, it had that slot as the #1 game. And then eventually games like League of Legends, like Dota, like Counter-Strike after the rework became more accessible and just became more appealing. And part of that is just due to the nature of the games and how they are. Part of that is due to decisions by developers in how to support their games or how to make them more appealing to a wider audience. But that's besides the point. That's another video. So what happened is that some content creators, StarCraft started dropping off in popularity, whether it's on YouTube or Twitch or in general. It wasn't getting the piece of the pie that people were used to. So as that started shrinking, a lot of the dead game, like people frustrated with sharing, and also just wishing, and the people. Okay, let's put this in defense of people who perpetuate thoughts like this. StarCraft is a game with incredibly passionate people. There are so many people who play StarCraft or played StarCraft or dig content or do content that StarCraft is not an easy game to get into, and I'm going to talk about that. It is not an easy game to either play at the highest level. It is not an easy game to make content for that appeals to a wide audience. There are so many passionate people, and because these people are so passionate, pretty much anything that is making StarCraft less less in general. I'm not even going to say too much about that, but just anything that takes away from StarCraft being at the top or even close to it it hurts. It is. These people, including myself, are very passionate about it. They would love to see StarCraft be the #1 esport in whatever way, but that's just not going to happen. We're going to go into myths versus reality. So these are the type of people, usually younger people, but not always, who kind of perpetuate the idea that it's either not worth it to play StarCraft, or StarCraft is just, there's no value in it, or it's a dead game, or no one's playing it, and no one will ever play it again. So that's kind of what it's boiled down to over time. So if you're getting into the game, if you're just learned about StarCraft or started learning things about StarCraft in 2015, 2016, or even 2017, and you're seeing comments like that, that was the history. It's been a few years since StarCraft has been at that top tier of esports levels. Obviously, you have more popular games. And I could name probably a dozen right now, arguably. But now let's go into, is it a dead game? Is it worth playing? Probably the title of this video, if I'm going to be really clickbaity. No. No. Very simply. I'm in the sense of a dead game in that, can you find players to play with? Are there people playing it? Do you have to wait for a game? Are there actively supported servers, balance changes, skins and animations and things like that? There are. In fact, I'll show you some links below. Over 200,000 people, give or take, usually play 1v1 ladder, just 1v1 ladder every season. Usually up to 2 million people between all the servers, including China. play this game every month. Of course, that could mean co-op, it could mean arcade, it could mean just custom games, whatever it means. There are still plenty of people doing plenty of things. I'm sure plenty of you out there as well just play arcade or just play co-op, and you're watching this video because it's very interesting, and it's an important topic to talk about. So, in any sense, we've had more balance patches in the last year. We've had community feedbacks. They're actually taking responses from people. We have community maps for the first time in the history of StarCraft. We have community managers reaching out to people even like myself for their input on what should be focused on. There's actually more support for the game. Is it too little? Is it too late? It isn't. Would it have been better to have been earlier on? I don't think anyone can argue with that. But in any practical sense, StarCraft is not a dead game. Once again, it's hard for me to say it like that because I feel dumb just phrasing it. But I just wanted to spell it out. Clear cut, black and white. No. Now, a more subjective question, is it worth getting into it? Why should I bother playing StarCraft if people aren't playing it, there's no pro scene? Well, that's blatantly untrue. StarCraft actually had one of the top 5 largest prize pools. Over, I believe, $2.5 million, maybe up to $3 million were handed out last year. It's continually, especially when it comes to games per player, because when you have a Dota tournament and the winning team wins $100,000, that's split between the team and the managers and all the players. Whereas when TY wins I Am Katowice for $100,000, well, he just won $100,000. So, he's got that going for him. But on top of that, StarCraft, the reason why I play StarCraft, why people in general play StarCraft, is not the same reason a lot of people play Hearthstone or they play League of Legends. It's just a different mindset. And now we're going to be talking, by the way, just about 1v1 here. I'll expand this into co-op, I'll expand it into arcade, but we're going to talk about that serious pro gamer MLG 1v1 mode. The most important one when talking about, obviously there's no competitive co-op in esports, and that's probably a good thing. But the reason is that there's nothing like StarCraft on any level. It is the #1 strategy game, and we can make an argument for Brood War as well, but that's still StarCraft, isn't it? But StarCraft 2 is the #1 strategy game at the moment that is accessible to a wide audience. Yes, it's not easy to learn how to play. It's not easy to understand, but there are no other games, there are no other 1v1 games that combine both the physical and the mental aspects of StarCraft, especially the strategy aspects, whether it comes to decision-making, literal APM and mechanics, understanding how certain builds and certain strategies work. There are no other games, not even 1v1, but games in general. There's very few other games where it's regular to see the matches take anywhere from 5 to 50 minutes. Other games, a lot of the time, there's a discrepancy, but when you have a game that's particularly short or particularly long, then it's usually an outlier. Where in StarCraft, in a best of 7, you could see 2 games that are under 5 minutes, and you could see 2 games that are over 40. And that's not an irregular occurrence. It's the most dynamic game, which is what makes it so hard to set up tournaments for some of the time. Especially with the Legacy of the Void, it's incredibly dynamic. So, StarCraft is, because it is so frustrating, so difficult to get into, is why it's also so rewarding. And I'm going to tell you from 2 perspectives now. We're going to move into getting started. I play StarCraft because it is the most difficult game. It has the highest potential, and I think even if you're not someone like me who has hours a day to commit to it, you can still get a lot of that. Obviously, you're probably not. If you can't commit 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're probably not going to be in the next WCS tournament. It's unlikely. And honestly, when you're starting out, I don't think that should be your goal, but it should be maybe something you aspire to. But I think the mistake a lot of players make when getting into StarCraft is just having no direction. And I think that's something that could be improved upon from the game itself, just like features in the game and options like that and tutorials. That's a different argument. I'm here. I make videos. I'm here to help recommend how to do it. And I'm going to speak from two different perspectives. One, as a player who started out and played 8 hours a day, 30 games a day, and I wasn't improving that quickly even though I was playing so many games. I was kind of just grinding them out because I did have the time, but I didn't really have the understanding. I hadn't really played a strategy game that much before. I would improve over time, but I got frustrated. I would play usually one race. I would switch my race on occasion, but I'd usually just play one race all day. And that would just be what I did. And I get in these ruts. I get in these holes where I just couldn't see. There'd be like a wall where I couldn't see over it. I couldn't see how to beat a certain strategy or a certain race. And I think the reason that is because I didn't have enough focus. I didn't have enough variety. I didn't know what I needed to focus on. And this is the reason why a lot of players are intimidated when they first start playing StarCraft. You guys can agree with me, or if you think it's something different, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But a reason why a lot of players, when they first start playing, is it's just so overwhelming. It's like, well, you're asking the question how to counter Ultralisk, when the answer to Ultralisk could maybe be just make sure you don't let them get to Ultralisk and a massive economy because you actually have to try to attack them early on. That's an oversimplification. But I think having variety and focus and be willing to take breaks and be willing to practice other parts of the game or play co-op or do whatever. And yes, a lot of people will say no, but I do think co-op, especially if you're playing on like at least hard-ish. I wouldn't say brutal, but it gets you some of the mechanics, especially if you play Raynor or Kerrigan or some of the more basic commanders, which you can actually play for free with the Starter Edition, by the way. Let's go ahead. Right now, a lot of people don't know you can play a decent chunk, a solid percentage of StarCraft for free. Yeah, you can't play ranked 1v1 ladder. You can't play the entire campaign, but you can play some co-op commanders. You can play custom games. You can get a feel for it with the Starter Edition. Either use a link below or check out the SC2 Starter Edition. Blizzard does a terrible job of advertising that you can play their game for free. Also, the fact that the game goes on sale like once every couple months for like $20 for Legacy, $5 to $10 for Heart of the Swarm, and Wings of Liberty. But I'm getting off track. I'm getting too specific. I have plenty of guides. I have tutorials, everything like that. You can check those out. This is about, is it too late to get into playing StarCraft? Is it too late? Is it worth it? Is the game dying? Unlike those Marines? No, absolutely not. Let's put it this way. If you're in Twitch chat, in my experience, I've been streaming professionally, if you can call it that. Get a real job, Winter. But I've been streaming for 4 or 5 years now. And I've been, especially recently, been focused on YouTube. And a lot of the people who watch me, a lot of people just getting into the game, they don't feel qualified to speak as to whether a game is worth playing because they're just getting into it themselves. So don't let... When there are 100 people in a room and 1 or 2 of them start slapping each other across the face and taking their shirt off and doing some body painting and saying ridiculous things to get attention, are you going to pay more attention to them or the 98 people going about their business? So whenever you hear things like that, and some of them may have legitimate arguments, there aren't as many people playing as there were. There aren't as many professional tournaments at the highest level. It isn't the number 1, the number 2, or even the number 3 esport. But does any of that matter, and should it matter to you? Maybe it does. In that case, you might not find what you're looking for in StarCraft, but if you're looking for the most satisfying experience, and you can play things like co-op, and there are plenty of videos out there on that. There are other modes, and if you just want to play a game to enjoy the game, well, there's plenty of that in StarCraft. But when it comes to, and we were just talking about 1v1 esports, tournaments, anything like that. That's all we're talking about right now, and it's very much so alive. It's very much so still, and more so over time. They're continually releasing balance patches. They're taking feedback from you guys. We have separate race MMR, so you can try out all the races, and I heavily suggest you commit at least 1/5 of your time playing StarCraft to playing the other races and getting some perspective. Maybe you think cannon rushes are the worst thing in the world. You try a cannon rush and you fail 5 times in a row, and suddenly you've learned all the ways a cannon rush can be defeated. But perspective, variety, and focus are incredibly important in StarCraft 2. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time once again in recommending some links. We have SC2 Replay Stats, which has just come out with their improvement tool as well. You can look that up on their site. I'll put a link below. You can give me some comments on whether you think I'm accurate as to why people find the game intimidating, how the experience could be improved, and it definitely could, but it continually is, which means the best time to plant a tree was 40 years ago. The second best time is today. The best way to become 420 Elite MLG Pro Gamer was 7 years ago. The second best time is today. Good luck, have fun, happy StarCrafting. Hopefully this video explained my perspective and it helped you out just a little bit in understanding some things, and maybe it will help you in understanding different things in the future. But good luck, have fun, and I'll see you next time. Thank you guys for watching, and make sure to leave those comments if you think I should know anything that I missed here.